Walls of Destiny. Part 1. Chapter 2. Fateful Meetings. Mylo secured lodging in the smithing quarter, conveniently close to his new job. The accommodation was modest but adequate, consisting of just 3 rooms. Fully furnished and reasonably priced, it suited Mylo's needs perfectly. The dwelling was plain, but its simplicity suited him just fine. For the next 3 weeks, his days were consumed by work and sleep. Immersing himself in his tasks provided a welcome distraction from the loneliness and melancholy that would creep in during moments of idleness. The rhythm of his routine helped him push aside the shadows of his past. Mylo quickly became adept at his new job, impressing his employer, Sterk, and earning his respect with his rapid learning. The initial 2 weeks were filled with the tedious but essential paperwork for the Forge's new SOL projects, a test of endurance and diligence. In the 3rd week, he faced another challenge, shoeing the most stubborn horse in the western half of the city. Despite its difficulty, Mylo's innate skill with animals shone through. By the 4th week, he was reassigned to the new product development department, where he began working with Finn Longfellow, a self-taught scholar highly knowledgeable in all the sciences. Mylo began to notice a change in the air as the 100th-year celebration loomed ever closer. The walled city began to buzz with an electrifying energy. Fluttering yellow and green banners began to line every street. Flowers and other gifts of sacrifice surrounded the statue of Odes Breiter, which stood tall in the town square. Whispers of his teachings, which spoke of the empowerment of the people to break the shackles of destiny, echoed through the city's labyrinthine streets. The dual nature of the holiday captivated the enthusiasm of both young and old alike, both the religious and the secular. It was a unity that the beloved King Ariad Idriaxis himself might have envisioned. Even Mylo joyously anticipated the rare festivities to come. He was beginning to think less and less about his homeland, especially in the light of this new distraction. He would have an extra 2 days off for the holiday, but there was more to Mylo's excitement. Though he couldn't quite identify it, he had the sense that something magical and unexplainable was coming. It was the last day before the festival, and Mylo sat outside at a table eating lunch with the work crew. Mylo listened to them talk about the religious sect that had such a presence in the city this time of year, the Breitarians. Sterk referred to them as a silly cult, while Mylo's new companion, Longfellow, had a good deal of knowledge about the sect but was not a follower himself. Longfellow was from Atlantia, like Mylo, and believed that one couldn't change their destiny unless they made offerings to the gods and prayed regularly. "So, are you going with us tomorrow night, Mylo?" asked Longfellow. "Where are you going?" asked Mylo. "We are going to the Ftweird Inn for drinks and games." "You should go with us, Mylo," said one of the crew. "I heard they might even have a band playing," added Longfellow. "I suppose I could go for a drink," he replied. "Or 9, said Sterk. After work, Mylo went home and unfolded the map he got when he came to the city. He had not looked at it since he had found a place to stay, and he hadn't gone to any of the places he had intended. He looked over the detailed map, tracing all the streets with his finger with a new resolve to venture out and explore his diverse surroundings. "Ftweird Inn is over here by the west gate," he said to himself. "The bad part of town," he thought. He thought of the money that had been stolen from him and the trouble with the drunkard, and wondered if he should go with his friends. "I will be surrounded by friends," he told himself, "and I will use extra caution." Mylo did some light reading and relaxed for the rest of the evening. He sat on his steps and listened to the sounds of excitement and anticipation which had been building like a child waiting to open a precious gift. Mylo awoke the next morning and finally ventured out beyond the walls of the smithing quarter with map in hand and the energy of the city in his heart. As he stepped out onto the cobblestone streets, he found himself in the midst of a whirlwind of joyful activity. Merchants frantically positioned their stalls to get the most exposure to passers-by. Bands adjusted their musical instruments, attaining near perfect pitch and tone, and the scent of the finest ingredients mingling together in the pots of bakers and chefs began to make their way down the streets and pathways of the city. For the first time since he had arrived, Mylo allowed himself to be swept away by the spirit of celebration that filled the air, his heart light with the promise of new beginnings. He traced out the path of the procession that the religious pilgrims would take later in the day. He passed the balcony where the village father would give his annual speech, then walked down close to the gate that he entered when he first arrived. To his left he saw once again the great library, whose majestic and enlightening halls were sought out by scholars, wizards, and kings alike. Mylo too sought the knowledge contained therein, but the library and many other buildings would be closed for the next 3 days due to the celebration. He walked north to the remaining piece of wall which stood as a monument to the older city wall before it was rebuilt by King Ariad and his men. The barbarians from the south had put the city under siege and finally broke through, destroying the old southwestern wall. When the city was rebuilt, it was expanded, and one piece of the old wall was left to remind people of the former chaos that once divided the land. As marching bands came out to rehearse their rhythmic routines, Mylo decided it was time to head back home. He made himself a quick meal and waited for the time that was set to meet up with his friends at the tavern. He began to doze off and was awakened by the sound of drums off in the distance. The procession was beginning. He was to meet up with his friends shortly after the speech that followed. The closer one got to the center of town, the more impenetrable the crowds of pilgrims, visitors, and other celebrants became. Mylo wanted to watch the procession, but he was too late to get a good spot to watch. Normally only guards were allowed up on the walls of the smithing quarter, but those living in the quarter were allowed to watch from atop the wall. Mylo climbed up and sat, his feet dangling over the edge of the wall. The marching band led the way, followed by the village father and his clergy, then the religious pilgrims who came from all around the countryside. Around they went, in a clockwise direction, circling the town center. The village father waved and interacted with the crowd as he passed by, like a politician running for office. After a few times around, the procession was done, and the village father went into his home and upstairs to the balcony. The crowd cheered and he began to speak. Mylo could not hear what was being said from where he was, but he didn't really care. He didn't know much about the religion and was happy in his ignorance. The speech went on for about 20 minutes, but it felt longer. The end of the speech was the signal for Mylo to meet up with his friends. He got down from the wall and took the back streets, avoiding the horde, and headed toward the southwest corner of the city. Many of the buildings in the southwest corner had been there before the walled city was expanded to include them. They were old, run down, and frequented by the poorest in the city. As Mylo passed by a narrow alley, he was nearly slammed into by two boys in tattered clothing fighting over a fat rat they had both laid claim to, in order to stave off the gnawing hunger that plagued their existence. After passing a few more rundown buildings and crumbling facades, he came to Freedom Lane, where the inn stood. Despite the inn's weathered exterior and its location in the city, it exuded an inviting warmth which put Mylo a bit more at ease. As he entered the inn, the sounds of jovial laughter and lively conversation lifted Mylo's spirits. Tables were filled with guests happily preparing for a special night which would be spoken of for many years to come. He spotted his friends at a table in the back and called out to them. They raised their glasses and returned the call. Mylo went and got a drink. It sat at the chair they had saved for him. Sterk looked across the table at Mylo, looked at the others at the table, getting their attention. "You know, I wasn't sure about this guy at first. Do you want to know why?" said Sterk, looking at Mylo. "When he came in looking for a job, I asked him if he ever shoot a horse and he said, no, but I once told a donkey to fuck off." He took a hearty gulp of ale before slamming the glass on the table. Everyone laughed, including Mylo. He listened as they spoke of events that happened in the city long ago, before Mylo arrived. As more ale was consumed, the more they reminisced. Mylo consumed more than he had planned, and everyone at the inn seemed to grow more and more raucous. "Did you pass the Seer's shop on your way here, Mylo?" asked Longfellow. "Seer? No, I don't recall," said Mylo. "She is probably closed today, but you should go. She is just so accurate with her predictions." "She will ruin your life is what she will do," interrupted Sterk. "Nothing but an instigator," he bellowed as he stomped off to use the bathroom. Enskrov, one of Mylo's co-workers, hailing from the heart of Sedernavia, the old country, came back with 5 emerald-colored goblets. "On me," announced Enskrov. A swirling mist cascaded from each vessel, weaving an enchanted spectacle that ensnared their senses. Mylo cautiously examined the noxious brew. "What is it?" asked Mylo. "Dragon's Mist," said Longfellow as he took a long sip. "Good stuff, but you must try the local high-gravity beer. It is made with real hops." "Which is great, but they make it with beet sugar." "Beet sugar is the only way to go," said Sterk. "Keep your Atlantean cane sugar. Absolutely zero flavor. And mugwort instead of hops? Keep that too," he laughed. A waiter had passed by their table, overhearing the argument. Seizing upon the opportunity, he approached the table with a wide smile. "Excuse me, sirs," began the pale man. "Are you aware of the sampling tray we offer? The tray includes beers and ale recipes from all over the continent, brewed right here. I am sure it could settle the entire debate." The offer was irresistible, so they ordered 2 just for good measure. Mylo only intended 1 drink, but the argument as to which country had the better beer turned into a tasting session, and the more he drank, the more his judgment became clouded. Soon, Longfellow and the others were speaking, but Mylo couldn't seem to focus on what they were saying. "I think I need to go outside," he said. They seemed not to hear him. The room and the noise seemed to taunt him, to constrict him. He pulled himself up and stumbled out into the city. The sun was beginning to set. The air was cooler, which seemed to help a bit, but then a wave of nausea gripped him. He staggered out into the road and fell to his knees and retched. He felt better, but he just wanted to get home. Attempting to orient himself, he began walking in the direction he thought to be north, toward his home, but quickly realized he was mistaken. With daylight fading, he didn't know which way he was going and soon found himself right in the midst of the very worst section of town. As he stumbled through the darkened alleyways and dusty paths, people peered at him in distrust. "Do you know where you are?" jeered some of them. Behind him he sensed a few ruffians gathering and beginning to follow him. He dared not look back but picked up his pace as he stumbled along. Before long he found himself in a more brightly lit part of the town. He still wasn't sure exactly where he was, and a large white tent with voices and laughter coming from within appeared in front of him. He went into the tent in hopes someone could help him. Mylo stood in the tent. Everyone seemed to have their eyes on someone on the opposite end. An entertainer perhaps, a juggler or a comedian, thought Mylo. With only one thing on his mind, he tried to get the attention of one of the men standing close to him. Mylo tugged at the man's jacket and asked him which way to the smithing quarter, but the man didn't seem to understand. Mylo tried repeating himself, this time louder, but his words, slurred and disjointed, tumbled from his lips in a chaotic jumble. People in the tent began to turn and stare at the spectacle. The man grew offended by Mylo's raised tone. "Away from me, drunkard," spat the man as he threw Mylo to the ground. Mylo unsteadily arose and out of instinct ran toward the man, but being not fully in control of his body, the man tossed him hard out of the tent and onto the cold ground. Humiliated and angry, he struggled to get back up when he felt a gentle hand pull him to his feet. He glanced up and saw her, a vision of ethereal beauty, her eyes like twin stars piercing through the darkness of the night. She smiled at him with a pure and beneficent expression. Mylo's eyes locked with hers, her raven-colored hair quivering in the gentle breeze. A silent understanding passed between them. With a whisper that stirred the depths of his soul, she uttered words into his ear that seemed to weave a spell around him. Before Mylo could respond to the mysterious beauty, a throng of last-minute celebrants pushed through, tearing the two of them apart, sending Mylo in a different direction. Haunted by her fleeting presence, Mylo searched frantically through mob longing for her ethereal presence amidst the sea of faces. But she was gone, leaving behind only memories and a lingering ache in his heart. Dazed and love-struck, he had forgotten all about going home. He only wanted to find her once again. He watched as the crowd moved on, wondering if she might be among them when, from behind him he heard the quaking of heavy footsteps. He turned to see what it was, and he came face to face with something incredible. Out of the fog emerged a great beast of the likes Mylo had never seen before. The paintings and drawings he had seen in books could have in no way prepared him for the experience of witnessing the majestic sight now before his eyes. The mighty elephant was led by a man and a woman of dark complexion, who recognized that Mylo was lost and intoxicated. The man touched Mylo on the shoulder reassuringly and gestured with a smile for Mylo to come with them. It was a short walk to Yushime, the village father's house at the center of town. Yushime was downstairs talking with some of the pilgrims when he saw the elephant. "Yovan, Leora," he called out. "I heard about Buried and was expecting you, but I didn't think you would come today, but I am glad you did. It is a shame what happened." "An investigation has been initiated," said Yovan. "Good, good. And who is this young man?" asked Yushime. "I am not sure of his name, but he was lost and appears very much intoxicated. I was hoping you could help him." "I don't think he is from the city. Probably got separated from his companions," said Leora. "I think I can help," he said as he looked Mylo over. "Come, we will bring the elephant around back." Mylo waved goodbye to the man and woman and followed Yushime. He had already prepared a makeshift shelter for the elephant, and he rolled a large bundle of hay over to the beast. "Here you are, Jack. And don't worry, I will find you a new keeper in no time," he said as he patted Jack on the trunk. "And what was your name, young man?" asked Yushime. "Mylo," he said as he swayed and tried to maintain his balance. "All right, Mylo, let's get you inside and get you some rest." Yushime guided Mylo to the guest room and gave him some water and bread and left him to sleep for the rest of the night. The firework display had just begun, but Mylo drifted off to sleep anyway. The noise triggered dreams of great battles and thundering cavalry. The history that he had learned in his childhood seemed to come to life in the most vivid dream imagery he had ever had in a long time. He slept well into the morning and was awakened by something tapping him in the back of the head. He swatted at it with his hand only to feel a strange tree-like object moving about. He lurched up in his bed only to see the elephant's enormous head staring at him through the open window. He sprang to his feet just as Yushime had entered the room. Yushime's tall, athletic frame loomed in the doorway, his eyes gleaming with the wisdom of a much older man, as he let out a vibrant, hearty laugh. "I think Jack has taken a liking to you," he said. "That elephant was real?" "I thought I had imagined it," said Mylo, catching his breath. "That's not just any elephant," he said. "That's Jack Majongo." "The elephant has a last name?" asked Mylo. "Yes, he is from Fervent. His name means Jack the Strong One," answered Yushime. "I hope you are feeling better. I just made breakfast." Mylo was quite hungry and thirsty. He followed him into the dining room and sat, taking in the smell of eggs and onions and peppers. Yushime set the plate down on the table and Mylo began to eat. "Have you heard of the Inoi?" he asked. "No," replied Mylo. An Inoi is a special type of animal said to possess a human soul. They are very rare, and Jack happens to be one of them. All Inoi thrive when they are paired up with a human companion. Jack's human companion was assassinated last week. I would take care of Jack as long as it takes to find a companion for Jack, but I think he has already chosen someone. Yushime looked out the dining room window, and there was Jack looking at the two of them. "You can't mean me," said Mylo. "I couldn't possibly take care of an elephant. I have never even had a horse of my own. And besides, I don't know the first thing about elephants." Yushime sprang up and strode off to his library and came back with a book entitled Complete Guide to Elephants and handed it to Mylo. "This book has everything you need to know. Not that you need to know very much. Jack is pretty self-sufficient. He is as smart as a human, well, smarter than some actually. I want you to think it over and come back in a few days. There are a lot of privileges to be had for one who is a companion to an Inoi. I know it's a lot to take in right now, so go home and get yourself some rest. I truly believe that fate has brought you here for a reason. Mylo thanked the village father for looking after him and for the delicious breakfast and headed home with his new book. He took a long look at Jack before heading north, back to his humble home. As he walked, he scoffed at the idea of being a companion to an Inoi. The nerve of the village father, assuming that I would just adopt an elephant, he thought. A flash of a memory of the dark-haired beauty from the previous night invaded his mind. Was she real? He wondered. For the next 2 days the memory of her would occupy his every thought. As he read the book Yushime gave him, he imagined her riding along with him, galloping through fields and going on long adventures in the countryside. The next day he walked the whole city in hopes of finding her, even though he knew the chances that she lived in the city were less than average, but he was determined. In his travels, several people whom he had never met waved as if they knew him. "Where's your Inoi?" asked one. "Hail, companion of Jack Majongo," said another. How do people know about this? He wondered. He enjoyed the newfound respect he was being given, and he began to wonder if these were some of the privileges that Yushime spoke of, and also if there might be more. After the holidays it was business as usual at the forge. The rhythmic clang of metal on metal and the smell of iron tools quenching in sizzling oil permeated the air. Workers rushed around busily filling orders and preparing them for delivery. But for Mylo, it was anything but business as usual. Gnawing at the back of his mind was the blissful memory of the mysterious lady and the decision he had to make about the elephant weighed heavily upon him. The horn sounded for lunch break and Mylo headed for the kitchen and took a seat next to Longfellow. "That was some festival," said Longfellow. "I heard you found an elephant." Mylo stared blankly ahead, took a bite of his sandwich and said something intentionally incoherent. "At the inn, you said something about the seer. I wonder if—" "Oh, yes," interrupted Longfellow, finishing a bite of his food. "Are you going to see her?" Would she help find someone?" asked Mylo. "Probably. She knows pretty much everything. So, who are you trying to find?" "That elephant." No. I know where the elephant is. I met a girl." "Oh, I see. I bet she could help." The afternoon bell could not have come quickly enough. Mylo rushed home and cleaned up and went straight to Freedom Lane to see the seer. He walked with a determined stride through the dusty streets and soon found himself outside of the seer's store. Over the door was a carved symbol of a hand with its palm facing outward. Swirling incense wafted toward him as he opened the creaking old, weathered door. Rows of jars of herbs and mysterious substances sat upon dark wooden shelves that lined the walls. All around were display cases filled with gems, wands, elixirs, and other magical items. Skulls, both human and animal, grinned from the dark recesses of the seer's store. A stout young woman sat facing toward the wall, frantically scribbling something on a piece of paper. "Excuse me, began Mylo. "Just a moment," said the woman. She paused and looked back at Mylo with piercing green eyes. "Not bad if I do say so myself," she said, looking at what she was writing. Mylo leaned forward to see what she was drawing. In front of her was a perfect pencil sketch of himself. "How did you?" asked Mylo. The seer stood and looked at Mylo with a sideways glance. "Never mind," he said. "What can I help you with today?" asked the seer. I'm not sure." "Well, why don't we start by sitting down?" she said as she gestured toward a table on the other side of the room. She walked to the table, pulled out a chair for Mylo, and sat opposite him. Mylo's gaze drifted to the objects on the table, among them, a blue semi-transparent crystal ball, a goblet, and a small satchel. She slid the crystal ball closer to her and casually placed a hand over it and sat back in her chair. "Going to make me do all the work, are you?" she said sarcastically. I am just looking for somebody." She inhaled deep and gestured with her hand as if guiding some unseen thing into her being. "Yes, I am seeing it now," she said, the whites of her eyes beginning to show. "I am seeing many things. So many things for you." She paused again. "She stole your heart," she said with a smile. "This one is a mystery." "Interesting. Of her I can see very little." "Where can I find her?" interrupted Mylo. The seer's eyes closed. Her head began to sway as if searching. "The pond. Every night just before dark, she goes to the pond at the center of town. You will find her there." "She lives here." "In the city, then," said Mylo excitedly. "Look for her, but beware. There is another matter that grips you, is there not?" "There is none," said Mylo, looking away. "You know of what I speak. I see great things for the Inoi and its companion, but without that union, nothing will change. You will spend the rest of your days in the walled city, working, eating, and sleeping. There is no future for you here." "But I like it here," he replied. "The newness will quickly fade just as it does for all the rest. Do the people here seem happy to you? Fulfill your destiny and become the Inoi companion." The seer paused and looked intently at Mylo. "Well, that is all the advice I can give you right now. I wish I could see more about this lady you seek, but something interferes with my sight regarding her, and that concerns me deeply. Perhaps after you find her, I will be able to see more. Come back in 1 week and let me know how things go. Don't forget to leave a generous tip. The steward's tax is not going to pay itself. The better your tip, the better my vision might be next time. Oh, and here's your portrait." Enjoy the rest of your day. Mylo thanked the seer and dropped a few cedros in the tip jar. He left the parlor, his head swirling with decisions that he didn't want to make and doubts he would rather not have. A new hope and a new energy stirred within him. Sitting idly at home was not an option. He walked the road surrounding the center of town 3 times. As he went by Yushime's residence, he looked closely, trying to see the elephant, but the backyard was too far from the road. Passing the pond, he imagined himself seeing her there and greeting her in a passionate embrace, just as it happened at the festival. After a bit more walking in the city, a gnawing hunger began to set in as he realized he had not eaten anything yet. He passed by a nearby vendor and sat and ate. It would be getting dark soon, and Mylo walked to the pond at the center of town, his excitement and anticipation soaring. Arriving at the pond, he saw no one there. He waited, trying to look as if he was looking for fish in the pond, occasionally scanning around. He was beginning to think the seer had deceived him when a figure emerged from the east, her silhouette illuminated by the fading light. At first, she did not notice him. He could hear her voice as she spoke softly to the geese and gently offered them food. Mylo hadn't thought of what he might say or how he might approach her. He hesitated, uncertainty gripping him as he stared at the water. After a few moments, she began to glance over at Mylo, and he tried to keep from looking back. To his amazement, she began to slowly walk his way. His mind raced, trying to think of something wise or clever to say to her, but he went completely blank. She was only a few feet away when she began to make eye contact. With a smile that illuminated the waning daylight, she stood before him. "Do you remember me?" she asked. "You look familiar," he said, trying not to hint that she was all he had been thinking about. "Yes, you were at the festival, though I don't remember your name." "Ellie," she said. "And I think you said your name was Mylo." "That's right," he replied. "I have been looking around for you," said Ellie. "Oh, well, I have been working a lot." "Maybe you shouldn't work so much," she said with a laugh. "The curfew horn is going to go off soon. We should meet here tomorrow, but earlier." "I would like that," said Mylo. Ellie offered Mylo a hug, and they parted ways for the evening, and Mylo seemed to float back to the smithing quarter, filled with joy and a new sense of purpose that he hadn't felt in a very long time. The next day after work, the seer's words regarding the elephant resounded in his head. It was his destiny to become the Inoi companion, and that if he didn't, he would spend the rest of his days in the walled city feeling unfulfilled. What was the elephant going to do? He wondered. Whisk him off to some foreign land or take him on some magnificent journey. After his workday, he decided to pay the village father a visit. The horn sounding the end of the shift echoed throughout the corner of the city. Workers poured out of brick factories and forges, busily starting the rest of their day. Mylo hurried home and got cleaned up and had a quick meal and headed to Yushime's house. Mylo knocked at the front door timidly and waited. Mylo heard a voice call out, "Mylo." He looked around but didn't see anyone. "Up here," cried the familiar voice of the village father on the roof. Yushime excitedly waved before disappearing out of sight. The door swung open and Yushime appeared before Mylo. "Sorry, I was busy tending my garden." "On the roof?" asked Mylo. "Oh, yes. I have a lovely rooftop garden. I will show it to you if you'd like. Come inside." The two went into the house and Yushime poured a mug of water and offered it to Mylo. "So have you given any thought to the matter of Jack?" "Some," said Mylo as he took a sip of the cold well water. "I know you are from a different land and have vastly different beliefs and ways of looking at things, but here you are. And the fact that you have come by today tells me that you are beginning to trust the way of things here. Come, I would like to show you something." Mylo followed Yushime as he moved swiftly up the winding stairs to the roof. As they emerged onto the rooftop, Yushime's garden unfolded before Mylo like a hidden sanctuary revealed. The evening breeze carried the scent of blossoms, mingling with the earthy fragrance of herbs, creating an intoxicating perfume that danced upon the air. Raised garden beds sat in neatly organized rows. Tomatoes, grapes, and other fruits climbed lattices reaching for the autumn sun, and medicinal and culinary herbs hung out to dry in the gentle breeze. Yushime led Mylo to a corner of the sanctuary filled with pots and potted plants and herbs being prepared to be brought inside for the winter. "Observe the species," he said, pointing to a striking blue and green cactus nestled amongst the other potted plants. "This would not flourish in the humid lands of Atlantia. It would most likely die. And these might grow in some areas but would not bear any fruit. And I am sure there are plants in Atlantia which would struggle to take root here. It reminds us, Mylo, that as each plant finds its fertile ground, so too do individuals flourish best where their unique gifts are nourished. In your case, for example, if you had stayed in Atlantia, you might not have grown to your full potential." His words hung in the air, imbued with a quiet certainty that stirred something deep within Mylo's soul. "In your journey, Mylo," Yushime continued, his eyes alight with unwavering belief, "you've ventured far from familiar shores. But perhaps it's here, amidst the soil of this place, that you'll find the nutrients to bloom into your true potential. Jack sees it, and so do I." With a gentle smile, Yushime extended a houseplant adorned with vibrant blue and yellow blooms, a tangible token of their shared understanding. As they descended the stairwell, Mylo carried with him not only the gift of flora, but also the seeds of newfound confidence, sown in the fertile soil of Yushime's wisdom. Yushime handed Mylo a hefty sack of peanuts and beckoned him to follow. They ventured outside to the expansive fence lawn nestled behind the house. There, amidst the expanse of greenery, stood Jack, a diminutive elephant hailing from the distant lands of Fervent. Though smaller in stature than his wild counterparts, Jack possessed a spirited energy, akin to that of a horse yet matched with remarkable speed and agility. With a mischievous glint in his eye, Yushime encouraged Mylo. "Offer Jack some peanuts, Mylo." Mylo dipped his hand into the bag, but before he could withdraw it, Jack's trunk darted eagerly into the sack, nearly toppling it from Mylo's grasp. Yushime erupted into hearty laughter, the sound echoing across the tranquil yard. In a playful display, Jack grasped the bag firmly with his trunk and began to prance about the yard, his jovial antics eliciting laughter from both Mylo and Yushime. Mylo, caught up in the infectious mirth, chased after the elephant, the thrill of the moment infusing the air with boundless joy. As Yushime watched the spirited duo frolic across the lawn, he surrendered to the irresistible tide of laughter, succumbing to the sheer delight of the moment. As the joyful scene began to unwind, Yushime approached Mylo. "It is good to be present, is it not? Should you decide on Jack, I will have everything in order by the weekend. I would keep Jack here indefinitely, but I'm a very busy man. It is not my path to do so. I wasn't going to tell you, but I went to the seer. Regarding Jack, she thinks I should become Jack's companion," said Mylo as he prepared to depart. The seer. "You see then, it must be fate," laughed Yushime. "In all seriousness, Napari is the wisest woman I know. She is a great asset to the city. Well, Mylo, it has been a pleasure, and I do hope to see you again very soon." As Mylo left Yushime's house, he thought of the spontaneous joy he had just experienced, and that it seemed like forever since the last time he experienced such feelings. It felt as if a connection was made in that moment with both Jack and the village father. He went for a short walk, not straying from the center of town. Finally arriving at the little pond, he waited for Ellie. As he sat watching the gentle ripples, his thoughts wandered through a labyrinth of possibilities. Was it fate that led him to the festival which would end up turning his life upside down, or merely the caprice of chance? How many unspoken serendipities lingered in the ether, unseen and unrealized? Amidst the myriad of uncertainties and possibilities, this path, right here and right now, was his. And as Yushime said, it is good to be present. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as Mylo pondered, until finally, a figure emerged from the east, graceful and enchanting. With a flutter of excitement, he rose to greet Ellie, her presence casting a spell upon him. She stood before him, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the sun, adorned in a gown of magenta and white that seemed to dance with every step. "Oh, you brought me a gift," said Ellie. "Oh, this plant? The village father just gave me this." Mylo's mind raced. Should I have gotten her a gift? He thought. "Are you a Britarian, Mylo?" she asked. "No, Yushime has been helping me with things." "Are you?" "No. I am from the West. We don't believe in fate." "I guess I don't either," said Mylo unconvincingly. "Are we allowed to use the boat?" asked Mylo, pointing at the small canoe at the foot of the pond. "Anyone can," she said. Without hesitation, Ellie seized Mylo's hand, her laughter bubbling like a brook as they raced towards the waiting vessel. With practiced ease, they set sail upon the tranquil waters, their conversation weaving through the fading light like a gentle melody. As they circled the pond, their voices mingled with the soothing lull of the evening breeze. They spoke of dreams and aspirations, of fears and uncertainties, their words flowing like the currents beneath them. As daylight began to wane, Mylo guided the canoe back to shore, his hand lingering in Ellie's as they made their way through the winding streets. The marketplace beckoned with its tantalizing array of sights and smells, and together they delved into its bustling heart. Amidst the labyrinth of stalls and tents, Mylo found himself entranced by Ellie's infectious energy, her laughter a beacon in the swirling chaos. Together, they savored exotic delicacies and shared stories with the colorful characters that populated the marketplace. As the night deepened, they found refuge in a secluded alcove, the soft glow of lanterns casting a warm embrace around them. Over drinks and shared tales, they forged a connection that seemed to transcend time and space. "When you have time off, we should venture outside of the walls," said Ellie. "That would be dash." The piercing cry of the curfew horn stopped Mylo in mid-sentence, its shrill sound slicing through the night like a blade. Mylo's heart sank as he realized the implications of their lateness. "I didn't hear the warning," he exclaimed, a note of panic creeping into his voice. "Where do you live, Mylo?" she asked. "The smithing quarter," Mylo replied. "You will never make it without being seen." Ellie's expression softened with concern as she took his hand, her touch a reassuring anchor in the chaos. "Quickly," she urged, her voice urgent but steady. "We mustn't be caught out after dark." With stealth born of necessity, they navigated the shadowed alleyways and hidden passages, their hearts pounding in unison with each passing moment. Twice they narrowly evaded the watchful gaze of the city guards before finally arriving at Ellie's doorstep, breathless but safe. "You'll have to stay the night," Ellie said softly, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. And in that moment, as the city slept beneath the veil of night, Mylo knew that he had found not just a companion, but a kindred spirit amidst the chaos of fate.